Hi, my name is Cameron Sanders.
Hi, my name is Essence.
Hi, I'm Aurora Rose.
Hi, I'm Marylin rosa-hernandez.
And this is modern and postmodern British literature.
Throughout the 20th century, you come across a lot of change throughout the century. There were eras that they went through, which were World War I and II, the postmodern era, the modernist era, and the technological era. British literature was heavily impacted by World War I. Many citizens were going through the horrors of war, and of course, with war, there are going to be some drastic changes to society. Social, economic, and political changes happened, and of course, the writers of that century had lots of things to say about it. They wrote about how badly society had turned, and during the war, the soldiers, men, and women turned to write as an emotional outlet. There were also more known writers such as H.G. Wells, Angus Wilson, James Joyce, William Golding, George Orwell, and Virginia Woolf. They were very well known authors throughout this period, and there are more authors who are well known back then. The modernist era was about doing things in an innovative way. They wanted to break away from traditional ways of writing and expand. Poetry and fiction writing were both changed. This era started free verse poetry. Free verse became current in English poetics in the early 20th century. The first English-speaking poets to be influenced by verse libre was T.E. Hume, F.S. Flint, Richard Aldington, Ezra Pound, and T.S. Eliot. They all partook in French poetry. This also started the Images movement, which was a group of English and American poets that was influenced by the harsh views of T.E. Hume and in revolt against the careless thinking and romantic optimism he saw. Since times were changing and they broke out of traditional writing, of course there were some technological advances. New technology made it easier, faster, and cheaper to produce books. Therefore, there was a boost in production of books. During this time, great books were being produced, like an all-time favorite of many people, Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter. World War II made British literature a bit more interesting. This is where we learn more about different authors and what they wrote during and after the war. There was a group called Angry Young Men. Kingsley Amis wrote novels that acted as social criticism. He was also considered the leader of that group. There were many authors, Jim Dixon, John Britton, and Joe Lampton, who all wrote economic and social struggles of Great Britain. Which brings us to the postmodern era. The postmodern era sought to change the language and traditional forms of expression. Now, before we talk about the 21st century, let's take a small break to discuss the evolution of the English language.
Through the mid-20th century, English became a widely spoken language. More and more people around the globe picked up English as one of their languages, both because of colonialism and general culture diffusion as worldwide travel became more and more common. English used to be spoken mainly by its native countries known as the Inner Circle.
But now we also have the outer circle in countries like India and Nigeria, where English is a very common second language. Finally, we have the expanding circle of English speakers, including everyone who has ever learned any English for any reason at any skill level. Speaking of these global speakers, throughout the 20th and 21st centuries, quite a few attempts have been made to simplify English for foreign speakers. In 1930, linguist Charles K. Ogden created Basic English, a simplified English that only has 850 words and a few simple grammar rules. Ogden recognized that most complicated English phrases could be reworded with simpler terms, and theorized that
Also, in 2004, linguist Jean-Paul Nere created a similar subset of English called Globish, short for Global English. Globish has only 1,500 words and uses fewer grammar rules than standard English. Nere noticed that the secondary and explained circles of English speakers could communicate effectively using a simpler version of English than native speakers. Another consequence of the globalization of English is that more English phrases get brought into other countries. Typically, these phrases are American English being brought into other English-speaking countries like the UK. Other effects of expanding access to the language known as Estuary English, named by David Rosewarne in the 1980s. Estuary English is where, especially in Britain, the upper-class language gets mixed in with the lower-class language, vice versa. This is a long part of becoming a trend in the 1960s and onward when English became more informal. Before the 1960s, written English was considered formal and correct, and spoken English was an unfortunate corruption of the purely written word. From the 1960s onward, written and spoken English began to merge into formal language, which is more common now.
The 60s and 70s also brought about the idea of political correctness. Certain words and phrases, such as slurs, became socially unacceptable to say. Around this time, euphemisms became common. For example, someone rude would have an attitude, a particularly dangerous problem would become an event or issue, loans with a little chance to be paid off were subprime. Professional jargon became common here as well. For example, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, a meltdown at a power station becomes a critical power excursion, and attacked by paratroops before sunrise, a pre-dawn vertical insertion. Moving on to the 80s and 90s, mashup words became common, with phrases like infotainment and mockumentary coming into play. Acronyms and abbreviations also became more popular, while at the beginning of the 20th century they were nearly unheard of. PIN, for a personal identification number, AIDS, for the acquired immune deficiency syndrome. Development in the 21st century has to do with advancements in digital communication. The early 2000s popularized the idea of SMS language or text speak, a form of abbreviated writing used often in digital communication. Phrases like BRB for be right back and TTYL for talk to you later, for example, were popularized as texting was first introduced. The exaggerated text speak of the early 2000s, like OMG, see you later, LOLXD, is falling out of common use as digital communication becomes easier and easier. The trend of globalization also became more prevalent in the 21st century with the popularity of the internet. Who knows how English will change over the century as the century goes on?
The 21st century is already bringing in lots of new culture influences to British literature. Although there may not be a lot of major historical events that are directly tied to the literature, there are a few that are very notable. For example, in 2003, BBC News conducted a year-long survey called The Big Read to find out the nation's best novel. According to over 750,000 people, the nation's best novel was The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. Second place was Jane Austen with Pride and Prejudice. Third was Philip Pullman with his Dark Materials. Fourth was Douglas Adams with The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and fifth was J.K. Rowling with Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Speaking of J.K. Rowling, her seventh book from the Harry Potter series, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, was published in 2007. Why is this important? Because this book broke the record for the fastest selling book in history, selling 11 million copies on the first day of release in the UK. Keep in mind that this is only one of 7 books in the Harry Potter series. Harry Potter has majorly influenced not only Britain, but the entire world. It has become such a big influence that the word Muggle, which is defined as non-magical people in the series, was added to the Oxford Dictionary, which defines it as being a person who lacks a particular skill or skills, or who is regarded as inferior in some way. This series has also changed each person on an individual level. A study done by psychologists shows that those who read the series were found to be more tolerant, more opposed to violence and torture, less authoritarian, and less cynical. The series also participated in a festival called the Welsh Hay Festival. This festival is one of the world's largest and best literary festivals. It is held every summer for 10 days and is one of the most important events for British culture. It brings together the world's greatest writers, poets, philosophers, historians, scientists, comedians, and musicians. The festival was one of the 11 Welsh winners for the Queen's Awards for Enterprise, an awards program for outstanding achievement by UK businesses in innovation, international trade, sustainable development, or promoting opportunity through social mobility. Even though Harry Potter has been the best-selling book in history, literary fiction is slowly beginning to fall out of popularity, and books about historical events are starting to become more popular. One example of this is famous historical author Dame Hilary Mantel. She works on historical fiction, personal memoirs, and short stories. She has been appointed Commander of the Order of the British Empire in the 2006 birthday honors, as well as Dame Commander of the Order of the British Empire and the 2014 birthday honors for services to literature. She is also the first woman to have been awarded the Booker Prize in 2009. The Booker Prize, also known as the Man Booker Prize, is a literary prize awarded each year for the best novel written in English and published in the United Kingdom or Ireland. The winner of the Booker Prize is generally assured international renown and success. The book that was awarded this prize was by the name Wolf Hall, which is named after the Seymour family seat of Wolf Hall in Wiltshire. This book documents the rapid rise to power of Thomas Cromwell in the court of Henry VIII through to the death of Sir Thomas More. Along with the Booker Prize, it was also awarded the National Book Critics Award in 2010.